Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, TSTV channel 347. Now, of course, this week leading up to the State of the Nation that's going to be occurring. And that'll, of course, start with the Cabinet Lekgotla, which will be held tomorrow and the following day at the Sefako Makhatu Presidential Guest House. Now, convened by President Cyril Ramaphosa, the meeting will bring together the leadership of the entire government of national unity to discuss the way ahead. Now, this comes on the backdrop of many legislations which have been passed, which have seen disagreements between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC. Three of them, of course, being the Bella Act, the National Health Insurance Bill, and as of recent, the expropriation bill that was passed. Joining me now to discuss what could potentially occur at that Lekgotla, I'd like to welcome no stranger to News in Focus on Hilaal TV, political analyst Dr Levy Ndou. Dr. Ndou, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening to you, Faraz. Good evening to the viewers at home. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Dr. Ndou, as they say, take out the popcorn. This is going to be very interesting. I want to start off, of course, with the Expropriation Act, because this is something that has really rattled the DA, as according to them. They're saying no proper consultation was done. The press conference earlier on today, DA leader John Steenhuisen is stating that he's going to meet with President Ramaphosa with regards to that. Dr. Ndou, this is going to be interesting because really one can see the ANC within this GNU really not compromising on this expropriation bill.
Well, I think there are areas that we need to seriously look at. The first area that we need to look at is that, yes, indeed, we've got the government of national unity, but at the same time, we still have the Parliament of South Africa. Equally so, bills are discussed in Parliament, and there are parliamentary processes that are supposed to follow. The President would sign bills that comes from Parliament. The President does not just sign, not having due processes being followed by Parliament. Now, it's important that there should be a clear distinction between the role of Parliament and where the President has to come in, and also considering that there is something called the Government of National Unity, the GNU. When they were signing the pact or making an agreement on the formation of the GNU, there was a commitment not to take over or to take away the powers that the President has. And what the President's powers are clearly stipulated in the Constitution. They talk specifically to what the President is supposed to do. And indeed, with the signing of this bill, it's part of what the President is supposed to do.
And that's where I want to come in with the next question, Dr. Ndou, the President's prerogative. I don't know, Levi, maybe you can give and that's why, of course, we've brought you on, because you'd be able to give a proper detailed analysis for the viewer. Is that something that some of the GNU partners, and I say some of them because the others are, of course, they're fully backed, especially the expropriation bill. I mean, parties like Rise Mzansi, and of course, naturally, it would be the Pan-African Congress. But the Democratic Alliance, have they maybe missed the trick? Because again, this was asked in the press conference earlier on today. This is the President's prerogative. Do they maybe understand the meaning of it, given that this is the first time, of course, we've got a whole lot of parties that are part of the executive?
We are still going to have more of these kind of situations coming. What I think the viewers should know is that discussions are supposed to take place in Parliament through Parliament processes. And anyone who has got issues or objections to such should be able to argue his or her case in Parliament and therefore convince others so that they agree on his or a point of view. But when a decision has been taken by Parliament, the President's role is to therefore sign, and of course, having made a number of considerations, having to look at the legality part and satisfy himself that indeed the bill does pass the legal test, and therefore the President has to sign. Let's look at a situation where the President does not sign the bill that comes from Parliament.
Sure.
The President will therefore be not executing his responsibilities correctly, and Parliament will still want the President to come and account. What I think appears to be the issue here is that the Democratic Alliance and other parties could be trying to micromanage the President. And unfortunately, the President appears not to be available to be micromanaged. Consultation, in my view, cannot happen at the time when the bill has to be signed. Consultation should take place openly through parliamentary processes. You cannot lose the fight in Parliament and therefore want to use your proximity to the President through the GNU and want the President not to execute his responsibilities. I think that is where they could be missing a point. Everybody who is in the GNU is part of Parliament, and these decisions were taken by the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, which includes all parties that are represented there.
You mentioned micromanaging, Dr. Ndou, and that's quite an interesting point, because a lot of the micromanaging, if you look at it from a holistic point of view, has been coming from the DA's federal chairperson, Helen Zille. Every time there seems to be a contestation with regards to a legislation that needs to be passed, she comes out, we saw earlier on today, vehemently, stating that, the three bills that, of course, have been passed by the President just seems to be, according to her, a lack of consultation. Now, there comes a point, and I'm sure the ANC is probably going to be addressing this, that you have to, they're going to say you have to draw the line in terms of this. Now, the DA says they want to stay within this government of national unity. But where does one draw the line in terms of this? Because you've just mentioned there is going to be more disagreements that are going to be coming through with this GNU.
There is only one way. The GNU is not a replacement of Parliament. Those that are serving in the GNU are serving as ministers and they're in the executive. We are going to have a cabinet Lekgotla where all ministers are going to sit and chart the way forward for South Africa. That is the place where members of the executive should be able to convince each other, because when decisions are taken there, they are going to form part of the government program. When you have got an issue on parliamentary processes, the only place to argue and win the case is to do so in Parliament. You cannot, therefore, get defeated in the parliamentary processes, and therefore you say, President, we don't agree with this issue. We are consulting with you so that you overturn a decision of Parliament. I don't think the President who understands the Constitution will do so. So I think the best thing to do will be for the coalition or GNU partners to find a way in which they are able to agree through parliamentary processes. And that could be something very difficult because they've got their own policies, they've got their own set of beliefs, and the only contested arena is Parliament. And you require these people to be able to get consensus through parliamentary processes.
One final question, Dr. Ndou. The NHI bill, many see that as a potential compromise that the ANC may look at. Do you see that being the case? And if that's going to happen, how is Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi going to negotiate his way around this, given that this has already been sold to the public as a bill?
Aaron Motsoaledi has to ensure that he runs the department in the best interests of all the citizens and ensure that what is agreed upon at government level has to be done. The unfortunate part is that when you are a minister, your responsibility is to serve all the citizens, and agreements are reached at a particular level. And all that you need to do, you have to ensure that such is being implemented. So my view is that Dr. Motsoaledi has to ensure that the interests of government are served, and at the same time, ensuring that whatever amendments that could be required as we move forward are actually effected and implemented.
Dr. Levy Ndou, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're always welcome. Thank you so much.
That's a political analyst, Dr. Levy Ndou, just joining us to look ahead to that Lekgotla. Yeah, as they say, take out your popcorns. It's going to be very interesting how this is going to go ahead. We'll have more for you, I beg your pardon, on News in Focus after the break.